In our world, erpte ene fractured be division, hatred, and injustice, our crucial question endures. How does humanity rise above its darkest impulses? How do societies heal wounds inflicted by oppression, and hatred to embrace dignity and justice? History provides us with profound answers to tell lives and voices of those rare individuals who resisted not with violence or vengeance, but with wisdom, moral courage, and unwavering vision. These influentials come from different eras, cultures, and backgrounds, yet share our common threads. They illuminate the path from hate to humanity, be challenging prevailing injustices and veils, embodying resilience, and inspiring transformation through the ideas and actions. Their legacies urge to reflect on the meaning of true power. Is it the force of dominations, or test strength to awaken conscience and foster unity? As we journey through their stories, we begin to understand how courage expressed in wisdom and just resists societies and sets new standards for human dignity. More than 2 millennia ago, Athens was a bustling city, state marked by intellectual brilliance, but also by political turmoil and social inequality. It was within this context that Socrates emerged, not as a politician or general, but as a relentless seeker of truth. His method was simple yet revolutionary: question everything. Socrates believed that knowledge and virtue were inseparable, and that the pursuit of justice began with self-examination and honest inquiry. Unlike many of his contemporaries who relied on rhetoric or accepted the authority of tradition, Socrates dared to challenge the status quo. He engaged fellow citizens, from common tradesmen to prominent politicians, in probing conversations aimed at exposing contradictions and falsehoods. His insistence that true wisdom comes from recognizing one's own ignorance was both humbling and provocative. However, this relentless questioning made Socrates many enemies. His critiques of Athenian democracy, the complacency of its leaders, and the moral shortcomings of society were seen as threats. The ruling elites feared that his ideas could destabilize the social order. Ultimately, Socrates was put on trial, accused of corrupting the youth and disrespecting the gods of Athens. Socrates' defense during his trial remains one of the most profound statements on the role of the individual in society. He refused to renounce his mission, asserting that an unexamined life is not worth living. For Socrates, living in accordance with justice and truth was paramount, even if it meant facing death. His choice to accept the death penalty rather than escape symbolized an unwavering commitment to principle over survival. The execution of Socrates was a tragedy for Athens, but it immortalized him as a martyr for intellectual freedom and moral courage. His life and death set a precedent. Genuine societal transformation begins not with violent overthrow, but with challenging minds to rethink accepted norms, to pursue virtue relentlessly, and to hold leaders accountable to higher ethical standards. Through Socrates, we learn that the roots of hate, injustice, and oppression lie often in ignorance and unquestioned assumptions. The antidote is courageous dialogue and the pursuit of truth, no matter how uncomfortable. His legacy reminds us that the path to humanity begins within. by questioning ourselves and our society. This profound insight opens the door for those who followed him across time, each building on the foundation that transformation requires not brute force, but enlightened minds and moral conviction. As we move forward, we will see how this thread weaves through the lives of other influentials who dared to transform societies through wisdom, courage, and relentless pursuit of justice. Building upon the timeless leg of Socrates' quest for truth and virtue, our journey leads us eastward to ancient China, where another profound thinker shaped societal transformation through wisdom and ethical guidance. Confucius, who lived over 500 years ago during the tumultuous spring and autumn period, was not a revolutionary in the violent sense, but a moral visionary. His teachings offered a blueprint for social harmony rooted in humanness, respect, and righteous leadership, in a society fractured by warfare and political instability. Confucius sought to restore order by turning to the ethical foundations of personal and political life. He emphasized the importance of cultivating virtues such as humanness or benevolence, li ritual propriety, and yi righteousness, sanctity of silence. For Confucius, the transformation of society started with the individual's cultivation of virtue and extended outward into family, community, and governance. Unlike the confrontational questioning of Socrates, Confucius approached social change through teaching and example. He believed that rulers must lead by moral authority rather than coercion. The ideal leader, according to Confucius, is the junzi, a gentleman or superior person who embodies virtue and serves as a role model. This model of governance proposed a shift from power based on fear or force toward leadership founded on respect, duty, and ethical responsibility of silence. Confucius' vision was revolutionary for its time and remains influential across East Asia to this day. His concept of Ren stresses empathy and kindness as the foundation of human relationships. In a world where hate often stems from alienation and injustice, Confucius teaches that humanity is rekindled through reciprocal respect and moral cultivation. His ideas, preserved in the Analects, became central to Chinese culture, influencing education, family structure, and political philosophy. More importantly, Confucius showed that societal transformation does not require upheaval or violent conquest. Instead, it is achieved through continuous moral education, personal discipline, and leadership that inspires rather than dominates. The wisdom of Confucius also speaks to the importance of social roles and responsibilities, recognizing that every individual, whether ruler or subject, has a duty to uphold harmony and justice. This emphasis on mutual respect and ethical behavior continues to resonate as an antidote to divisiveness and conflict. As we reflect on Confucius alongside Socrates, a pattern emerges of both understood that meaningful transformation is rooted in inner change and ethical commitment, not in brute force or hatred. Their teachings challenge us to seek justice through the power of ideas, dialogue, and moral example. This legacy of moral leadership and intellectual courage transcends time and culture, laying a vital foundation for later figures who would carry the torch forward. From the ancient streets of Athens and the courts of Zhou dynasty China, the message is clear. True influence arises not from domination, but from the ability to inspire virtue and awaken conscience. From the contemplative philosophies of Socrates and Confucius, who laid the groundwork for wisdom and moral leadership, our journey takes us to 19th century America, a nation divided by the brutal realities of slavery and racial injustice. In this crucible of oppression, Frederick Douglass emerged as a beacon of resistance, dignity, and transformative power through the eloquence of truth. Born into slavery, Huntlands Douglass's early life was marked by unimaginable hardship and deprivation. Yet, his indomitable spirit and thirst for knowledge propelled him beyond the chains that bound his body. Self-taught and fiercely determined, he discovered that education was the key to liberation, not only physical but intellectual and moral. Douglass's voice carried the weight of lived experience, giving piercing insight into the cruelty of slavery. Through his autobiographies and speeches, he exposed the dehumanizing violence of an institution justified by ignorance and prejudice. Unlike many who viewed enslaved people as voiceless victims, Douglass reclaimed agency and redefined freedom as a universal right rooted in human dignity. His method of resistance was multifaceted, combining oratory, writing, and political activism. Douglass did not simply plead for emancipation. He demanded justice. He challenged the nation to confront its moral failures, emphasizing that true liberty could never coexist with the systemic hatred and inequality entrenched in American society. What distinguishes Douglass from earlier philosophers is the immediacy of his struggle and the urgency of his call to action. While Socrates questioned authority and Confucius advocated ethical leadership, Douglass confronted the brutal reality of racial subjugation with fearless clarity. His refusal to accept partial freedom or silence in the face of oppression electrified the abolitionist movement and inspired generations. Moreover, Douglass's legacy is not confined to the 19th century. His life and work highlight the power of personal transformation as a catalyst for social change. How one individual's quest for truth and justice can ripple outward to challenge entire systems of hate. He embodied the principle that liberation is inseparable from knowledge and that the pursuit of justice demands courage and voice. As we reflect on Douglass's contributions, we see the enduring thread connecting him with Socrates and Confucius. The belief that the roots of societal change lie in awakening conscience and challenging the moral blindness that permits injustice. Each of these figures, in their own context, refused to accept the status quo, insisting that a more just and humane society is possible. Douglass's voice set the stage for future leaders who would continue the fight for equality and human dignity. Among them was Malcolm X, whose fiery rhetoric and unyielding demand for justice added new dimensions to the ongoing struggle against hate and oppression. Following the eloquent moral courage of Frederick Douglass, we arrive in the mid-20th century, a period marked by intense struggle for civil rights and racial equality in the United States. In this turbulent era, Malcolm X emerged as a powerful, uncompromising voice demanding radical transformation, not through passivity, but through unapologetic assertion of dignity and self-determination. Born Malcolm Little, his early life was scarred by violence, systemic racism, and personal loss. Yet, it was this crucible of adversity that shaped his fierce resolve. Malcolm X's rise from street hustler to influential leader was fueled by his embrace of education, self-awareness, and a deep understanding of the socio-political forces that perpetuated racial hatred. Unlike many civil rights leaders of his time who preached integration and nonviolence, Malcolm X's rhetoric was confrontational and unapologetic. He challenged the prevailing notions of racial accommodation, urging Black Americans to reclaim their identity, pride, and rights by any means necessary. This phrase, often misunderstood, was not a call to violence for its own sake, but a declaration of the right to self-defense and uncompromising demand for justice. Malcolm's journey was also one of personal transformation. After a pilgrimage to Mecca, he adopted a more inclusive worldview, recognizing the potential for unity across racial and religious lines while maintaining his core commitment to justice and equality. This evolution underscores critical truthing transformation, personal and societal, is dynamic, complex, and deeply human. What sets Malcolm X apart is his embodiment of the struggle against systemic hate in its rawest form, and his insistence that dignity cannot be negotiated away. His life amplifies the urgent need to confront oppression head-on, exposing the violent structures that sustain inequality. Yet, Malcolm X's legacy is not simply about resistance, it is about empowerment. His unwavering belief in the power of knowledge, identity, and self-respect as tools for liberation resonates profoundly with the philosophical foundations laid by Socrates, Confucius, and Frederick Douglass. Like them, he recognized that transformation begins within, through self-knowledge and courage, and radiates outward to challenge and reshape society. Through Malcolm X, we see the continuum of voices from different times and cultures converging on a singular truth. Combating hate demands both wisdom and courage, and justice requires boldness and moral clarity. Sanctilence, his fiery spirit and compromising vision remind us that the path from hate to humanity is often difficult, requiring steadfast resistance and unyielding hope. Violence, emerging from the passionate fire of Malcolm X's call for justice and empowerment. We now arrive at Nelson Mandela, a towering figure whose life journey embodies the transformative power of resilience, forgiveness, and visionary leadership. Sanctity of silence. Mandela's struggle against apartheid in South Africa stands as one of history's most profound examples of moving from entrenched hate toward a future rooted in humanity and unity. Mandela's early years were marked by his deep commitment to justice and equality, inspired by both indigenous African values and broader humanistic ideals. As apartheid's brutal system of racial segregation and oppression entrenched inequality and hatred, Mandela chose to resist, not only with courage but with a strategic vision for an inclusive society. Unlike Malcolm X's uncompromising militancy, Mandela's approach evolved into one of reconciliation and bridge building. After 27 years of imprisonment, he emerged not with bitterness or desire for vengeance, but with a remarkable capacity for forgiveness and nation-building. Mandela understood that sustainable transformation required dismantling systemic hatred without perpetuating cycles of retribution. His leadership during South Africa's transition from apartheid to democracy exemplified the power of moral authority over coercive force. Mandela's emphasis on Ubuntu, an African philosophy meaning, "I am because we are," underscored a radical reimagining of community, interconnectedness, and shared humanity. This ethos fostered a spirit of inclusion and healing, reminding the world that humanity flourishes when people transcend divisions of race, class, and history. Mandela's example also highlights the profound interplay between personal sacrifice and societal transformation. His willingness to endure imprisonment without relinquishing his principles inspired millions and catalyzed global support for justice. His legacy affirms that genuine influence is grounded not merely in rhetoric or power, but in the integrity and humility to lead with compassion. When we consider Mandela alongside Socrates' quest for truth, Confucius' moral vision, Douglas' fearless voice, and Malcolm X's fiery demand for dignity, a compelling pattern emerges. Each of these leaders confronted hate with different tools: philosophy, moral education, eloquence, resistance, and reconciliation, but all shared an unyielding belief in the potential for human dignity to prevail. Mandela's life invites us to see that transformation from hate to humanity is not linear nor simplistic. It requires courage to face injustice, wisdom to seek reconciliation, and patience to nurture healing. His legacy challenges us to envision leadership not as domination, but as stewardship of shared futures. Following the visionary reconciliation of Nelson Mandela, our narrative brings us to the powerful voice of Martin Luther King Jr., Sanctity of Silence, a leader whose commitment to nonviolence and justice fundamentally reshaped the civil rights movement in the United States and inspired global struggles for equality. King's philosophy was deeply rooted in the belief that hate cannot drive out hate. Only love can do that. He echoed the teachings of earlier moral leaders like Socrates and Confucius, emphasizing the power of ethical conviction and peaceful resistance to transform society. Drawing from Christian theology and the nonviolent resistance of Mahatma Gandhi, King crafted a uniquely American vision of justice, one that called for courageous yet peaceful confrontation of systemic racism. His leadership during the 1950s and 1960s galvanized millions, turning the struggle for civil rights into a movement of conscience that transcended racial and national boundaries. Through eloquent speeches, such as his iconic "I Have a Dream," and strategic civil disobedience campaigns, King exposed the moral contradictions of segregation and racial injustice, appealing to the nation's highest ideals. King's insistence on nonviolence was both strategic and deeply ethical. Sanctity of silence. He recognized that violence would only perpetuate cycles of hatred and undermine the very humanity his movement sought to restore. His vision extended beyond legal equality to the creation of a beloved community, where justice, peace, and dignity are accessible to all. The legacy of Martin Luther King Jr. also reveals the profound interconnectedness of social justice struggles worldwide. His work built on the foundations laid by predecessors like Frederick Douglass and Malcolm X. Yet his unwavering commitment to peaceful change distinguished his path. King showed that love and moral courage could indeed reshape entrenched systems of oppression. In reflecting on King alongside Mandela, Douglas, and the ancient philosophers, we recognize a continuum of leadership that balances the necessity of confronting hate with the transformative power of compassion and wisdom. King's life teaches us that sustainable change is not merely about dismantling unjust systems, but about building new frameworks rooted in respect and mutual understanding. As we draw near the culmination of our journey through history's most influential voices, from hate to humanity, we arrive at James Baldwin, an unyielding moral conscience whose penetrating insight into race, identity, and justice continues to resonate deeply in modern society. Baldwin's profound contributions as a writer, thinker, and activist illuminate the internal and external struggles that sustain systemic hate and offer a path toward honest self-examination and transformation. Born in Harlem in 1924, Baldwin grew up amid the twin pressures of racial segregation and the complexities of identity in a society rife with contradictions. Unlike leaders who wielded rhetoric or political power, Baldwin's instrument was the written word. Essays, novels, speeches, which he used to confront America's deeply ingrained racial hypocrisies with unflinching clarity and compassion. Sanctity of silence. Baldwin's work stands out because it challenges society to face uncomfortable truths. He argued that racism is not merely a matter of individual prejudice, but a systemic condition embedded within the very fabric of culture and institutions. More importantly, Baldwin emphasized that overcoming hate requires an intimate reckoning with ourselves, our fears, biases, and denial. His famous assertion that not everything that is faced can be changed, but nothing can be changed until it is faced, captures the essence of his approach. Honest confrontation is the first step toward genuine transformation. This focus on internal struggle links Baldwin to the great philosophers who came before him. Sanctity of silence. From Socrates' relentless questioning of the self to Confucius' call for moral rectitude, Baldwin took this introspection further by exposing how societal narratives and historical silences shape identity and human relations. His ability to interweave personal narrative with broader social critique gave voice to the marginalized and illuminated the painful realities of injustice without surrendering hope. Throughout his life, Baldwin urged society to embrace complexity and reject simplistic binaries of good and evil, friend and foe. Sanctity of silence. He believed that humanity's survival depended on cultivating empathy, recognizing shared vulnerabilities, and breaking down barriers of fear and hatred. In doing so, of silence, he added a crucial dimension to the ongoing dialogue from hate to humanity. The necessity of truth-telling grounded in courage and compassion. Sanctity silence. In the broader arc of our exploration, Baldwin's legacy complements and deepens the lessons of leaders like Frederick Douglass, Malcolm X, Nelson Mandela, and Martin Luther King Jr. While each of these figures confronted hate through activism and leadership, Baldwin's unique contribution lies in his role as a searing critic of cultural denial and advocate for the moral awakening of society. As we reflect on these 7 influentials, spanning from ancient philosophers to contemporary voices, a profound truth emerges. The journey from hate to humanity is neither simple nor swift. It requires the courage to confront injustice externally and internally. Sanctity of silence. The wisdom to seek reconciliation without surrendering justice, and the unwavering hope that transformation is always possible. As we conclude this exploration of 7 extraordinary influentials, their voices resonate as a collective call to action and reflection. From the ancient philosophers who laid the ethical foundations to modern leaders and thinkers who faced the raw realities of injustice, each reminds us that the journey from hate to humanity is complex, continuous, and deeply human. These figures teach us that overcoming hate is not a matter of brute force or quick fixes, but a sustained process that requires courage, wisdom, empathy, and above all, an unwavering commitment to justice and dignity. Whether through Socrates' relentless questioning, Douglas' fearless advocacy, Malcolm X's demand for respect, Mandela's reconciliation, King's peaceful resistance, or Baldwin's moral clarity, we witness different yet interconnected paths leading toward the same destination. A society where humanity is honored in all its diversity. Their legacies compel us to recognize the forces of hatred still at work in our world today. Yet, more importantly, sans silence, They illuminate the possibilities inherent in every individual to become an agent of transformation. Each of us holds the capacity to challenge prejudice, to build bridges, and to foster communities grounded in respect and understanding. As we reflect on their journeys, we are reminded that this is not just a historical narrative, but a living challenge. The transformation from hate to humanity is ongoing, in our societies, our institutions, and within ourselves. It demands vigilance, self-awareness, and the courage to choose empathy over division every day. In a world often fractured by fear and misunderstanding, these influentials provide both inspiration and guidance. Their lives affirm that while hate may be persistent, humanity is resilient. Through wisdom, dialogue, and compassionate action, the path toward justice and unity remains open. May their stories inspire us not only to remember but to act, to become the influentials of our own time, shaping a future where humanity prevails over hate.